All right, welcome to our Gymnastics WA education series. This is our third instalment, and we welcome Greg Hire, who's going to talk about leadership and influence in clubs and just in general. Greg's an NBL champion with the Perth Wildcats, and also the founder of his A Stitch in Time, which is a charity organisation. So Greg's a really strong candidate to talk about this topic. So I'll hand you over to Greg now, and we can get started. But yeah, on behalf of Gymnastics WA, really appreciate giving up your time and to do this.
Awesome, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate it, and obviously greatly appreciate the opportunity. As I like to do, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we meet upon, the Wajak people of our nation, and pay our respects to elders past and present. Guys, I'll just show a quick video just to give you a bit of insight. It's obviously always nice to think that people know who I am, but realistically, now retired 3 years, unfortunately, that might not be the case. So I'll show a little bit of an insight in terms of my own career, and hopefully they'll share a little bit of, go into the presentation as well. So yeah, a couple of minutes, and then we'll get underway.
Oh, what have I done? Oh.
Are you on? I don't need to save a new family, do I? Just a new student?
Yes, just well, it won't do you any harm if you save both, but yeah, save the kids,
So
then
can I
save
do
the family.
another
Can
family?
you do a $10 trial fee?
All right. All right, I'm just going to if everyone can sort of, I'll try and set up a little bit of a chat thing as well. See if I can get there. Can everyone just quickly yell out if you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. I can hear you, but it's sort of the sound's dropping in and out a bit there, Greg.
Okay. Jesus, not ideal. All right, might give me 2 seconds, mate. What I might try and do is just to get a better, video link. Sorry, like internet service. So bear with me if that's all right. Is that all right, Mike?
Yeah, that's a bit better. Well, it should be a lot better.
Okay. So is that okay? You're happy enough for me to go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. That's better.
Awesome. All right. Let me just get that in the chat. All right. So again, what I would encourage everyone to sort of do in this sort of format. There's only a few people. Again, it's just to engage, but as well as for the clubs that do watch afterwards, so they get a little bit of context. Why I wanted to show that video, and this is what put you guys on the spot. So, and I saw some behind the screen for a little bit. I want to ask, watching that video, what are some of the, I'm hoping my grammar is good here, but the adjectives or describing words that you would see from that video, or best describes oneself in terms of what you saw in that regard?
Sorry, Greg, it's really quiet again, mate.
All right, let me try and I'm going to try and change the internet server, mate. Give me 2 seconds, okay?
Yep.
All right, you there, Mick?
Yep.
Is that all right? Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
All right, hopefully that works. I've just changed, put in the dongle. So I'll start. What I wanted to ask, obviously, and feel free to put it in the little chat, or if you want to yell it
Sorry,
out.
mate, it's dropped again.
Jeez. All right, we'll try one more time. I'm not sure.
That seems to sound better. Hopefully that.
Okay, is that better?
Hopefully it sticks around.
All right. Feel free to write in the chat or whatever comfort. Want to ask you, when you're watching that video, any descriptive words or the person that you see being shown in that little highlight clip, what comes to mind in that regard? You have to help me out here, or otherwise it'll get awkward and I'll be just staring at myself at a camera screen.
Success.
Yep. Yep. We got West Coast Gymnastics. Anything there? Or Tony? I think you're on mute, Tone. Yep, there you go.
It's actually Emma, not Tony, but I missed
sorry.
it. I missed it. I've got a new receptionist in, so I had to help her then. But I would say, to me, the bits I saw was colour, and it looked like fun and,
Yep.
Passionate. Yes.
Awesome.
Definitely. Yep.
Fantastic. Why I asked that, and appreciate you providing that feedback, Emma. Why I asked that, and it's, now I ask you this: what do you see behind the camera screen now?
Well, it's dark and.
Yep, the person more so.
Yes.
Yeah. So why I remark on that is we really don't know, in terms of life in general, leaders, coaches, mentors, whatever we see people of influence, we really don't know the story behind that individual. And why I remark about that, that's a 2-minute glimpse into my own career. And obviously that's the good parts. But we generally don't see the tough obstacles that individuals face. It's not something that gets promoted. And to give a little bit of context, that was the back end of my career, and obviously I retired, but I retired because I was emotionally exhausted. It was a really turbulent time, and I was 10 years playing professional sports, doing something that I love, I fell out of love with. And take that away as well, as a 15 to 16-year-old adolescent, you know, I was not the prototypical role model that athletes looked up to. Drugs and alcohol were really prevalent in my life. Domestic violence, unfortunately, was a thing that I had to experience quite often. And these are things that never get mentioned. You know, you hear about the accolades, the achievements, the 243 games, and the 4-time NBL champion. And so what I hope today, and I leave you with a few takeaways, and when we talk about leadership, one of those things is to find out the story behind the individual, the person that demonstrates success. Yep, I'm very fortunate in the position that I'm currently in, and as a professional athlete. But so often we unfortunately forget about what makes up an individual, the challenges that they really face, the adversity that they face, and I think that's a huge part in terms of our human connections, getting an understanding of what they may be. So wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share, obviously, and there's a few things that I've learned along the way being in that regard, and I can be confident, and this is the only time I sort of pump up my own tyres, obviously showing a highlight tape, and I just mentioned I played 243 games with the Perth Wildcats, 4-time NBL champion, just recently represented Australia in the international 3-on-3 format, a new format that's discipline that will be at the Olympic Games, and my ambition is to play in the Commonwealth Games. But again, it's been a really tough road. And the first thing I sort of want to talk about is a very valuable lesson that I learned as a 10 to 12-year-old kid. And upon a reflection, I wish I would have sort of placed a little bit more emphasis, just as I was going through my transition as a professional athlete, from getting my very first contract to, then getting leadership roles. And that's the basics. And I'll share this story. And so as a young chap, I have a huge appreciation for grassroots sports and the amount of hours that we spend volunteering in that regard. But back in the heyday of basketball, there was an event that came to Perth. It was called the NBA Jam Session. And basically what they were using was, at that point, some of the greatest or the best players playing in the NBA at a young age coming down to Perth, which was generally uncommon. And it was all about that whole basketball industry, sneakers, trading cards, video games, all that sort of stuff. And anyway, I had an incredible opportunity to basically be the shadow of an NBA guy by the name of Grant Hill. So if anyone, I'm trying to think of context, but think of the best people at the moment in the gymnastics world. Grant Hill was the best at that time for us. And so he came down here. He was hadn't reached the pinnacle of his career, but he was regarded as one of the best players. And so I was fortunate enough. I basically did everything for him in terms of if he needed a drink of water, that was me with a Mount Franklin bottle, handing it to him. If there was if he needed a towel, if he wanted to feed, I was doing that. And I didn't mind it. I mean, I was a young kid. I just wanted to be immersed in that. So anyway, I gained the confidence after spending a few days with him. I asked him if I could just go watch him work out, obviously quite tentatively. It sort of went quite timidly, asking him if I could just see, the people on top of the game, to see how they actually, they get it done. And so I went up to Mr. Hill at the time, and I sort of said, "Oh, look, sir, is it okay if I could come watch you out?" And he's like, "Absolutely, 4 o'clock tomorrow." Now, I wasn't smart enough or quick enough to have real quick response, because for me, I was quite confused, because 4 o'clock, we had a session with the under 18, under 20 elite academy the next next day. So I sort of was like, he understood my look, and he said that 4 o'clock in the morning. So obviously, me being the young whippersnapper, I sort of, and as our parents love to do, I literally asked him. I said, I said, I'll be there, and he goes, yep, 4 o'clock in the morning. So I asked my mum, I said, Mum, you know, as you do, can you get me there at Perry Lake Stadium, which has now been demolished? And reluctantly, she said, absolutely. But I said, I want to be there at 3:30. I wanted to impress him, as you do. And so I rock up there in the car park the next morning, and the ball is, I already hear a basketball bouncing. I'm thinking in my head, who in their right mind is already working out, you know, at 3:30? And surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, as you guys would know, he's there. I walk in, and there's Grant Hill in a elaborate sweat. Like, he is, he's doing a workout before his workout. And as 4 o'clock hits, his coaches walk in, and I'm on the side court, haven't said a word to him, didn't even acknowledge him. I just, because trying to be the consummate professional that you are. And they start their workout, and the most shocking sort of thing that comes to me for the next 45 minutes to an hour sort of occurs, because I see Grant Hill, one arguably top 5 player in the world at that time, doing the most basic drills, the most fundamental footwork activities that I would teach to an under 8 kid right now. You know, if I run a clinic, he was doing this. Now you're talking about his, at the top of the game, he's doing it at elite level and precision, precise and everything at ultimate effort. But for the next 45 minutes, he was just doing the most basic drills. And here's me looking for something, searching for something to see why he was different. And I was confused, and obviously did his workout. And once he was done, he finished up and they walked off. And it stuck with me for the next few days. And I finally got, again, the confidence to go up to him on the last day. And I went up to him and I said, I just need to ask you something. And he was like, absolutely. He was the most humble and gracious man going around. And he said, yep, absolutely. And I said, I just need to ask you something that's been bothering me. And he said, yep, go ahead. And I said, you are one of the best in the world at this time. But the other day, you were doing the most fundamental and basic things. Why? And he smiled. And he said, why do you think I'm the best in the world? And it confused me. And I sort of, I was, and he saw that look and he said, I never get bored with the basics. His secret is that he never gets bored with the basics. And as obvious as that sounds, just because it's basic doesn't mean it's easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And we live in a world where we're told it's acceptable to skip steps, always be on the hunt for a shortcut or a hack. And we always challenge to look for something that's hot and sexy. But we ignore the basics. But every time you do that, I believe we make a grave mistake. Because to me, the basic works. They always have, they always will. And the first step, I believe, in our lives is that, whether that be personal, professional, individual, as an organisation, is to admit that the basics works and to have the humility and acknowledge that every single day will be difficult, but not to shy away from finding something that's different just because it is different. And that was a really big thing for me. I think as I got on in my career was to get back to the basics. When I halfway through my career, when I get my most significant contract, I remember my very first contract ever given was a development play contract, $6,000 a year, which when I say that to a young kid, they're like, oh, that's amazing. But then when I had to convert it down, it was literally $2.50 an hour. And I remember countless times, doing everything that was asked, the extras, and sitting with an assistant coach, just working on the most fundamental principles of shooting, from that. And you sit there, like when I go to a basketball court now, there's kids shooting 3-pointers or half-court shots. They want to go from, what is end up as point Z, they're already, they miss out A, B, and C. And it was a sort of in that eye-opening experience as a professional athlete to make it was, standing under the hoop with one hand to try and develop the most basic technique to get your shot to mid-range to then, the 3-point line. But then halfway through the career, once you start getting the pressures and the expectations, you start trying to do things to add to your game. But there was a reason why I was given to the contracts, is because of those, making sure that my basics were perfect. And I think if there's something in that regard is to, if I can leave with you, and that's one of those things is not to just dismiss the basics in that regard. I want to share something from a leadership standpoint, and this is, I'm not going to say it's the reason why we won a championship in our last year, but I do believe it definitely played a part. And I sort of want to talk, and I'm not sure if, I'm a big reader and look around stuff, and you may have heard about the why, and Simon Sinek, who's a bit of a motivational speaker, sort of took the world by storm, I think in maybe 2009, and really has some really powerful pieces, but it's about the why. And I sort of want to speak in that regard, why for me and how I found it. And there's some things, we always, and we talk about the basics, we're always searching for something, but some things we'll find another way, and then you can adapt to your organisation. And I'll share this experience. My last year, we were very fortunate to have an opportunity to play in America against a number of NBA teams, specifically the Denver Nuggets and the Utah Jazz. And so it was the first time the NBL hadn't done it for some time, and so you can imagine that you always, as an athlete or as an individual, you want to test yourself against the best in the world, and that was our opportunity to do so. We won a few championships. You're in your own bubble, and you sort of do think you're pretty good. And so we embarked on this long trip to play these teams. And on the way there, I'm a bit of a fan of watching sport documentaries, and came across a series, Hard Knocks, which is portrays or produce production on an NFL team, and they go in the inner sanctum, and they show individuals and they show the coaches and whatever it may be, and you get to see the varying personalities. And came across this big burly 300-pound lineman. But I always love when specifically men demonstrate vulnerability and show that side that you never generally see, just because of the perception that it's weak. But there was this guy that sort of mentioned his why, and spoke about the importance, obviously his own background from coming from a real broken home, and financially he obviously wanted to make an impact in his own family, but he spoke about the why and how every single person in that organization had a different why. Not one person would be the same. And it sort of was I sort of, upon watching that, was like, yeah, absolutely. There's some people that are doing it for reasons because it's the motivation. They had a really tough upbringing. There's some guys that it's not selfish, but have never received money, or there's some guys that are driven to go to the Olympics or represent the country, whatever it may be. There's various reasons, and you can't judge an individual on that regard. And so anyway, I kept it by the side, and we played the Utah Jazz the very first game, and we talking about a humbling experience. Like, we went in there as you go into every game or competition or meet, you have an expectation that you'll win. There's obviously a fear that you're going to perform, or you even know sometimes they're going to be better than you, but you obviously have that's just, I think if you have that inner desire and mindset, you're going to compete, and you might do something special. And that definitely didn't occur, because within 3 minutes of the game, we were down 20-0, and in basketball terms, that's not ideal. And we ended up getting pants, as they say. We lost by 60 points, and it was talking about experience, but it was, absolutely humbling to see where you're at. But it ended up being, I think, a really cool dynamic for us, because a few days later, we were reflecting upon the game, and I was the vice captain of the team, and I sort of had this opportunity where I wanted to implement the why. You know, you're always searching for something, especially when you're in a team that's been together for something. You're always looking for that extra percent, and I wanted to implement this, and I asked the head coach and our leadership group to ask every single individual in a setting what their why was, and they would write this down. We didn't need to know at that time, but obviously I wanted to know what was the reason why they're motivated. Why did they rock up every single day with a purpose? What was their desire? And at the completion of the regular season, we had this opportunity for every single person to read it out. We sat outside the RSC arena in the car park. Obviously, you can't. We're in that setting, and you know, our head coach, talking about vulnerability, very enclosed human being, but he shared his why, and he didn't. This wasn't his project, and he was freaking out before it. What do I do? What do I say? I said, mate, just do whatever you feel is right. And he read his why. I won't share it for obvious reasons, but it was the most authentic, genuine moment that allowed us to see a different side of who he was. And now, did we judge? Initially, I thought, okay, that's an interesting why, but it was good for him to open up. And every single person in our team had a moment to share this. And naturally they did that, and they didn't feel pressured, but it was huge. And it was a trigger for us, you know, in games when there's so many things that could be happening, you know, bad calls, or you're on the road and you start feeling sorry for yourself, or you're a bit tired, it's your fourth or fifth game in 7 days, and you know there's barriers and things in front of you. You're looking for something, and it was that word why. You'd be in a huddle and you'd go, hey, what's your why? And you wouldn't say, oh, and you'd deliberate and discuss it, but it was something to stay present, to stay focused. And I'll talk about that. And I think it was huge for us because, you know, if I asked every single person, you know, currently involved and whoever watches this afterward, if I said, don't think about a pink elephant, everyone would think about the pink elephant, right? It's in your head, it's there. And so for us, when we say that naturally and you hear that audibly, you hear that why, and it could center yourself. And that was huge. Now, obviously, we won a championship and we, you know, it was good to share that moment. But every, you know, if I drew a circle and Simon Sinek shows that, you know, every leader or coach or whatever, they know the what, right? They know, and if we talk about a company success, they know their products, they know the industry, they know the competitors, all right? And some organizations or sporting clubs, they know how they do what they do, all right? They know what makes them different, all right? But I believe the difference between the high achieving sports clubs or organizations, they know or can articulate their why, their purpose, their cause, their belief, the reason for their being. And the why is why anyone should care. It's the what is the easiest to know and articulate, you know, and usually we all start with the what. And sometimes we discuss the how, but we rarely talk about the why. And for me, that's the most important thing. We should really invert the other way around. It should start with the why, then the how, and then the what, and go from an inside out sort of process, because I think fundamentally that's one of the most important things in that regard. Mike, we got 15 more minutes, mate, or how are we going for time? Hopefully he's still here.
Sorry, mate, I was on. We've got up to 30 minutes, mate. So.
Perfect. Awesome. I'll go, yeah, perfect. We've got 30 minutes. 25 because I'm going to run into another meeting and I can't be late for that. But I want to share this, and obviously you'll, as people in the sporting landscape, you have an appreciation. I want to talk about this, and I won't go too much into it. And one thing I do want to say in this regard is, following from this, feel free to make contact with me. I'll put my email if there's anything that you want. quickly, and then you guys can get some more information. The 5 people you meet in heaven. It's a book, Mitch Albom, and I recommend it in that regard. Basically, don't want to ruin the story for you, but basically, an older fella meets an individual at a theme park. Unfortunately, an accident happens, and goes to heaven. But I sort of wanted to, as I was reading that, and I saw some similarities to people that I met through the college. College, but through my journey as a professional athlete. And I want to talk about these people. And the first one's the interviewer. And I'll talk about the real lived experience behind it. And for me, the first one, which was huge and sort of a bizarre sort of situation. So when I was playing collegiate basketball, you're recruited. You're asked to go to however many schools, you get to check out their campus, and it's an amazing experience. Like, I mean, as a 21-year-old or 18-year-old, when I was going on some of these visits, you're going to Hawaii, you're going to Alaska, places that you've never, you go on a holiday with, and they roll out the red carpet because they want you to attend their university. And that's what happened. I went to a college, and generally what the process is, you go in there, you meet the coaching staff and the faculty, you tour the facilities, and then you have a workout, and they want to see if you can play. Now, I went to a college in Alaska to visit, and kind of bizarre experience, and I'll delve into it. Saw the campus, and then I basically, on the second day, I was there for 2 days, and I hadn't done any workouts. I went out for dinner, and the whole team was there, and coaching staff and support staff, and we just had 3 or 4 hours of just talking and getting to know each other and having a bit of a just to find out how each person was. And we got done, and I asked the coach, what's the schedule for tomorrow, expecting him to say I'll work out at 8 o'clock in the morning. He goes, oh look, sleep in, and I'll take you to the airport about midday. So I was very puzzled, and I thought, why, hold on, I haven't even worked out. And it was only, and unfortunately I never went to that school, or I had pretty much lined up, but I met the coach a few years later at a tournament, and I had to ask him, I said, when we did that visit, I mean, I was working out and doing all this stuff. I said, why did you never, I guess, interview me, ask me to train, ask me to perform? And he goes, I did interview you. I interviewed you at dinner. That was the experience. I wanted to know how you would get along with your teammates. Like he said, I knew how you played. I watched you countless times. I had all the scouting clips, but I needed to see if you could actually fit your role. Like if you could adapt to that environment. Now, we take jobs all the time without even knowing who's working with us, or we accept positions of power without even really knowing the environment we then conform or have to adapt. And for me, that was huge. And that was upon reflection, whether I thought that was a good environment. But for me, that was massive to know that I could have easily gone to that school, because not for the purpose of me playing good basketball, but he could actually see that I was a good fit for his team from my personality traits and character. And that was, for me, was a really good process, was when that interview process was, are they actually, for any person in a team or anyone in an organization, not are their skills and experiences suited to that role, but is that person going to fit my team in terms of their personality and their strengths and characters? Because you can build skills and you can build experiences and you can give them certifications, but if they can't actually get along with the people that are involved in the organization, it doesn't fit. It won't work out, and you end up just not being successful. The second one was the bully. And we all think about the bully, the kid in primary school that's 8 foot tall and she'd go around. But for me, the bully was someone that compromised my values. And that was happened during my professional career, early in my stint as a vice captain in the leadership group, where I had to stand up not only for my own beliefs, but for the team. And I think there's always that moment where you have to draw the line in the sand, irrespective of everything you do. And we had an individual, you might hear this, the no DICK policy, head policy with the Sydney Swans, and these sort of these anecdotes that other clubs have. But for us in the Wildcats, there was a few things that we would always stand by, and one of those was brotherhood, relentlessness, and commitment. And I had a player, and generally I was very fortunate. I didn't have many confrontations, and we had a lot of guys that bought into what we were trying to do. But I had an individual that was consistently late, right? Tardy, unprofessional, didn't do recovery, do all those little things that behind the scenes don't seem to go in. But when you start accepting poor behaviour is when standards drop. And there was this moment where, there was excuse after excuse after excuse, and I had to stand up for what was generally right. Now, was that a tough conversation? Absolutely. No one likes conflict. No one wants to tell someone what they don't want to hear. But that for me was a line in the sand. What are we going to accept? These are the behaviours. Now, it ends up that individual was one and done. All right, and as talented as they were, they didn't fit the culture of the team. But I thought that was another real sort of critical piece for us, was to go, we don't accept poor behaviour or poor values, irrespective of how talented someone is. The educator. For me, this is actually sort of as I got transitioned later into my career, and why it was quite important. I met a mentor of mine early in the piece in year 2, and I hadn't seen him for a number of years. And in year 6 of my career, I saw him, and he asked me, had I become smarter? So I obviously, when I heard that, I said, oh, absolutely. This is what I'm doing. These are the achievements I had, these are all the things I've done. I can now do this. I feel confident for my body. And he said, no, have you become smarter? And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, have you become more educated? Obviously, I said my same, yeah, this is, and he said, no, these are all things that you've developed from a skill set, but you actually haven't got smarter in the game. Physically, I lost weight and got quicker and faster, but you lose that. Like by year 7, 8, 9, and 10, you don't have that general quickness or whatever. And it was, for me, was I becoming smarter in my approach? Was I investing my time to watching scout, watching opposition, analysing my own actions? We are so focused on results, right? So in a basketball, it's making shots, but we're not focused on the other stuff. How can you better yourself or make yourself more valuable to your team off the court? And for me, that was huge. Like even from, even in the profession that I'm in currently, or in anything else in that regard, is why we don't continue to become educated, why we don't read. We get 1 degree and we're content, even from a personal development standpoint, why we need to continue. Once you're in a role, I think it's important that we continue to become educated and never be satisfied with what that is, because there's things that are consistently evolving, consistently changing. And I think that was a huge part, was to yearn for education, was to get smarter, not just on the basketball court, but was to look at everything. Now reach out. When I was playing, my mentors were no longer just West Coast Eagles captains, they were partners in law firms, because you can get things from different industries. Just like I'm speaking to you today and I'm a basketball player or former, vice captain, we're in different sports, but you'll find tangibles or connections that you go, oh, they're relevant in my sport, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And so for us, I think that was really important, was the education standpoint. The last two, the mentor. And I spoke about it before, but I think this was very critical in my piece early in my career. And that photo, Brad Robbins, was my mentor. He was the former captain of the Perth Wildcats, a championship winning side, represented Australia. And why it was essential for me to have him early, he had a similar story to me. Came up as a development player, was a guy that sort of I can be honest in my approach and say I was never the most talented player, definitely not the most athletic, but I was the hardest worker. Brad had the same similarities and quite contrast in terms of our careers. We're very similar in that way. But early in the piece, I won him over. I was he had a child at a young age, and as we all know as parents, sleep isn't at an all-time high at that. He was a single dad, and so when he went on the road, basically that was his time to sleep. And me being on the road, all I was yearning was I wanted to be a sponge, which he hated because he just wanted to go to bed. Now, I won him over, but that was huge for me, for my own growth, that to have someone that had experience, what I was trying to experience, they had had those experiences. And I think that's huge, finding someone that you can ask anything, and not be criticised or judged, to have that in any space. I think it's a very undervalued asset that we don't really look at. Even looking at some of the athletes that go through the systems right now, and I talked to Emily Little, but there's a lot of athletes that I guarantee if you reached out to them in some angle and said, could you provide a little bit of guidance or support in the group setting, they would. That they're selfless, and I think it's a resource that's untapped, or not untapped, underutilized. So I think as elite athletes, we see that, right? As I get done in my career in 10 years' time, and I facilitate sessions, they won't know who I am. That's hence why I show the video clip, so I have some reputation intact. And we'll see that, if Nick Natanui went into a room, he would command a presence just because of his profile. So I think you need to tap those people that have demonstrated success at some point. But in saying so, in our own individual lives, is to tap into people that can demonstrate success as well. Now, the last one, and is the reflect, and I think that's obviously is us. As I have retired and now moved on into my next phase of life, and looked at who I am, is to consistently reflect on what's gone wrong, what's gone right, and to be able to write that down and to evaluate it. I think that's been huge, even in my own current climate right now, and even finished off as the way I did, is to be able to reflect and then go observe that, and then now input that to other people. I think there's a reason why things happen, and I think it's important that if there's any valuable life lessons that have been learned, it's a shame if we don't share that with other people. I think communicating that and understanding that, I think so often we're reluctant to share knowledge at times, just because maybe the fear of judgment in that regard. But I think that's really important in that piece. Now, the last thing that I sort of will finish on, and I'll use this as an opportunity, and I think it's a good little synergy and ties into the basics. I want to ask, and feel free to write on a chat or yell them out in some attribute, but just let me know what you can do to maintain, I guess, physical health. What would you do? So it could be anything: cycling, eating nutritious. Yell it out, write it down. Perfect. Awesome. All right, thanks for sharing that, guys. Now I want to ask you, why do we do that? Why do we doing body balance and walking dogs? Why are we getting adequate sleep? What is the reason why we're doing that? Makes you feel good? Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else? Body heals while asleep. Yeah, recovery. Absolutely. So I want to dig deep into that. Body heals. All right. In essence, what for? There's an answer that I'm looking for, and that's my answer. But what are we ultimately aiming to do? repair and recover, be in peak position mentally and physically. All right, perfect. So we're all on that line. We can all agree. We all generally, right, and for me, and the answer is we all ultimately want to live longer, right? That is, we're not thinking about it right now. And if you said that to a 14-year-old or an 8-year-old, they'd go, yeah, okay, I'm living till I'm 100. So they're not really thinking about that. But ultimately, we're doing everything possible to live longer, right? We can all agree on that front. Or better quality of life, be able to do our job to the best of our manners. Yeah, you want to be the best gymnast you can be, all right? We all spend time, effort, and money into our physical health, all right, for those reasons. All right, perfect. Now, I'm going to be on a little bit of a journey in this regard, so stay with me. All right, if your car, all right, and you're not a mechanic, all right, and you don't know what you're doing, all right, and you can yell it out, all right, if your car doesn't work, not what you would do, what are you expected or supposed to do? Take to it, yeah, perfect. Exactly right. Take to a mechanic, all right, because they're the experts, they know what to do, all right? You want to go from point A to point B, all right, you take it to them, take care of it. Awesome. If you have and let's forget about COVID, but maybe we could do it, but if you had a sore throat, runny nose, you're fatigued, you're pretty tired, you know, if things aren't going well, not what majority of people do, what are we expected and supposed to do? Perfect. Go to a doctor. Why? Or have rest, but you go to a doctor. Why? Because they're the experts. All right. Ultimately, you want to go from feeling crap to feeling good. All right. You want to go. I know my basic signs, symptoms, and cues. Yeah, we're not experts, but we have basic signs, symptoms, and cues. I'm not feeling well. You know, go to a doctor to ultimately, you know, get treatment, get a prescription, even say, hey, have some rest. We need that, right? Absolutely. Okay. Now, when I ask people if they spend time, effort, and money into their physical health, every single person would say, absolutely, yes, they would, right? For the reasons: better quality of life, live longer, you know, perform at what they're doing to the best of their ability. Now, if I ask you guys in the room, if you spend the same time, effort, and money into your mental health, would you? Now, 90% of Australians don't, right? And why not? I ask why not because it's that negative perception behind stigma. I mean, it's stigma. It's that perception that it's weak. And I speak about that vulnerability, right? But we have this assumption that our physical health is more important than our mental health. And what I've learned, and I'm sure there's some people in the room that would agree with me, but what I've learned in my last 6 years of my own mental health journey and 10 years as a professional athlete, is if I did not spend the same time, effort, and money into my mental health as I did as my physical health, then I wouldn't live the best quality of life that I was accustomed to. I wouldn't perform to the best of my abilities, or ultimately to live longer, right? And when I ask people to go, hey, just like you could easily write down or yell out, oh, look, this is what I do for my physical health: walk dogs, go to the gym. When I ask, what do you do for your mental health, there's a little bit of apprehension. It's a little bit of, I'm unsure. And for me, that's such a valuable thing, even from a leadership, is to prioritize our mental health, because we see them as two separate things. We see physical health and mental health, but they're entwined. Without the other one doesn't exist. And I learned that as a professional athlete, on top of my game in terms of, skin folds and strength and feeling as good as I could. And all it took was a couple of games of poor performances where I crumbled because I wasn't focusing on the mental health sort of side to a game. And we all know that an athlete that is confident performs to the best of their ability. And that's a mindset thing. And why I say that is, and I brought up this situation with the car, and mechanics is I believe we all have our own unique vehicle, all right, different shapes, different sizes. Okay, we've got our wheels, which are our legs. All right, mine aren't working as good as they used to be. All right, I got my fuel pump, which is my heart, all right? And then I've got the engine, which is my brain. And just like every single person goes and services the vehicle of their car, all right, they don't worry about the spoiler or the exhaust pipe. I'm sure some people do, but they worry about the engine of their car, because that's the thing, that's the most significant thing that's worrying about them, right? The engine or the brain. And if there's a takeaway from that, and that's when I talk about the basics, we talk about that and wary of time and what people can do, is to focus on mental health and how basic that may be, you know. And there's some things, physical exercise is the most fundamental principle in terms of exercises. We have a psychologist in our organisation, and she prescribes that when they leave. What are you doing in terms of exercise? But whether that is gratitude, whether that is mindfulness, these things that when I say talk about time, effort, and money, I displayed it. I action this every single day. I work now currently at Waste, and I talk to my athletes every single day, and I ask them to write down their gratitudes. What are they grateful for, and who are they grateful for, and why it's staying present, right? Because we live in this world where we focus on the future or worry about the past. They're not focused on the present, right? And how I sort of talk about that is our brains are wired to see the negative, all right? And it's in an evolutionary sort of sense, when we're cavemen back in the Neanderthal days, all right, and you walk outside a cave and you're looking around, you don't admire a waterfall or the beautiful sunrise, because there's this fair chance a saber-toothed tiger is right behind you about to rip your face off, right? And now, thousands and thousands of years later, we now have evolved. We can now close that door on the saber-toothed tiger and still protect ourselves. Our brains are still wired to see the negative, right? And if I show these experiences, just like when I retired from professional sports and I was on social media, all right, 100 comments, congratulations, incredible career. There'd be 2 that I'd say overrated, should have never been given a gig. Now that didn't affect me, all right? Don't really worry about that, but my brain sees that, my eyes see that, and you have those feelings, right? And that's what gratitude does. It gives you a moment to stay present, all right? Just like an incident, we saw that in COVID. How often do we see that experience? And I'll unfortunately have time, but how often, you know, when we went into lockdown, you know, we were so consumed on what we didn't have, not what we had. You know, and I think that's important. That's what gratitude does. I do it with my children. I do it with the athletes that I help support now. I think that's a really, really powerful tool, and feel free to reach out in that regard. It's an evidence-based approach as well, which I think is important. You know, it's not just some, and each your own. No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you know, there's evidence behind it that if you can practice gratitude within 21 days and within 42 days, you can start changing your life in a significant way, which alleviates some of those mental health conditions that arise. And why I say that, I asked everyone, time, effort, and money into your physical health. Now, we spend a lot of time into our physical health in terms of working out, effort. You know, a lot of people go to gyms, and money, they'll spend thousands of dollars in gym memberships and diet. And they all affect mental health, absolutely. But something as simple as doing gratitude or mindfulness or meditation or whatever of these things is free, minimal effort, and doesn't take up too much time. And so that's the last thing I sort of leave with you. And then I'm more than happy to ask if you to answer any questions that you may have. Is to prioritize your mental health. I think it's important that we dismiss this all the time. We don't even, you know, I talk about it. And so I love speaking to sporting clubs and organisations, because it's the pathway, and it's a generational thing, I truly believe. And I think that's leadership. You know, I don't like comparing the two, but it's like racism in sport. You know, 40 years ago, you'd go to an AFL game. I'm not saying I'm 40, but you know, I speak to a lot of former AFL guys. But you know, in the 60s, you'd sit in the grandstand and you could abuse anyone, right? And there would be no accountability. It was accepted. now, this day and age, if you say one thing, you've got a text line or a phone saying, hey, there's someone in the crowd that's abusing someone. I'm not accepting that behavior, right? And it's the same with mental health. I think as we continually evolve and we understand the conversation around mental health become more and more important. And I think that needs to be front of mind. I work in elite environments right now. And obviously the current situation that we would all know what's happening, unfortunately, with gymnastics and my current employment, you know. But that's where we look at it. If I asked every single person that ends up watching this workshop, and I ask if you have had an individual, a staff member, or whatever it may be, that you have felt concerned or felt that they may be dealing with a mental health condition, I would imagine, and statistics show that 2 in 5 will go through a mental health condition, 1 in 4, sorry. I imagine every single person raises their hand. Now think about a gymnastics coach, all right? Top of the game, the Australian gymnastics coach. Now, if she or he came to WA and ran a presentation, I would imagine you would have a sellout workshop, a presentation. You'd have 100, 250 people, because they would place an emphasis on the skills and techniques for gymnastics, right? Which might not be applicable to your members, but you would feel like it's important. But if a psychologist or myself came to your club and asked if I could run a mental health workshop, would we have the same enrollment rate or participation rate? But I would strongly believe that's way more important than, if you could argue this, than tumbling or rolls or whatever it may be. Because I can guarantee every single individual will not only deal with mental health condition, and it can be preempted. You don't have to be worrying about your well-being to have to be suffering from a mental health condition to place a priority on it. You can be proactive instead of reactive. And the most elite athletes or the most successful individuals in the world place an importance on their mental health mindset, behaviors that assist them. So I do want to finish on that note. I know there's a couple of minutes. Feel free. I'm happy enough to ask, and I can give out any resources as well. So, but again, guys, really, really appreciate the opportunity. Mick and Gymnastics WA and Emily Randolph, thank you for allowing me the opportunity. I always love to be able to speak about the things that I've learned and things that might be applicable in your own sports as well.
Awesome. Yeah, really appreciate you providing your time, Greg. Does anyone have any questions for Greg in the couple of minutes that he's got?
Awesome.
Yeah, so thanks, Greg. And for everyone that's obviously watching this recording or watching it live, I think this is a really, really good presentation to show not only to your coaches, but also your athletes in terms of what Greg's spoken about. So, yeah, we really encourage you guys to show this at your clubs and to all your members. So really appreciate your time, Greg. Really interesting and really insightful.
No worries. No worries, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Talk soon.